Restraining orders issued under the Maintenance of Religious Harmony Act will take immediate effect instead of the previous 14-day notice. It's aimed at preventing offensive statements from spreading quickly on social media. And other amendments to the Act have also been passed in Parliament.
Freedom of religion and maintaining a secular government were the principles of the Maintenance of Religious Harmony Act. However, Home Affairs Minister K. Shanmugam highlighted 4 trends that have changed in the last 30 years since the Act was passed. These include the rise of religiosity, which can be exploited for identity politics.
Secularism is ideal, but it's difficult to get it right, get the balance right. Our Constitution guarantees the freedom of religion, but so do the constitutions of many other countries, including the United States, and that has not prevented the rise of identity politics. The second trend that I want to touch on is the increasing violence from conflicts that have been fueled by religious hate speech. Once hate speech is systemically developed and normalized, it destroys social cohesion.
Mr. Shanmugam also spoke about social media and the internet, which can be used to mobilize hatred and mob attacks. The updated act will require religious organizations to disclose foreign donations and affiliations.
It's easy for religious movements in other countries to affect us, religious movements, a new way of thinking, revolutions. We have put in some circuit breakers to prevent events relating to religion affecting us negatively. You cannot completely shut out.
The amendments will include religion-related offences brought over from the Penal Code. These can be offences that urge violence against another person or group.
And one of the proposed amendments to the Maintenance of Religious Harmony Act is the introduction of a community remedial initiative. The initiative would let alleged offenders take remedial actions to mend ties with the aggrieved community.
Some examples of remedial actions under the CRI include issuance of a public or private apology or participating in activities that promote religious harmony. In determining the appropriate actions, the Minister will consult with religious leaders, though the final decision rests with him. The CRI is not mandatory. The alleged offender can refuse to take up this offer, and the non-completion or refusal of the CRI will not be a criminal offence. At the same time, if the offender agrees to complete the remedial actions and does so, the Minister undertakes not to refer the case for criminal prosecution.
While members of Parliament supported the amendments to the Maintenance of Religious Harmony Bill, they noted that added measures could be taken against those who incite hatred in a private setting. Some also cautioned against allowing religion to influence policies and called for social harmony to be protected.
Some MPs pointed out that the distinction between the private and public space, as laid out in a new provision, could be problematic. What's discussed in a private setting could spread into the public space, especially in this digital age. But the new provision allows religious leaders to defend themselves if they can prove their message was meant for a private gathering.
The fact that there had been an incitement of enmity, hatred or ill will, even if it is in a private setting, could be a cause for concern. A more profound hatred could develop over time through repeated private discussions and with different groups of people.
MPs recognise that it's impractical to police private space and suggested a calibrated approach. Home Affairs Minister K. Shanmugam said this is where the new community remedial initiative could be useful, but he made it clear that the government should not intrude too much.
Rationale for the defence is to recognise that there will be situations where the religious leader will want to speak unencumbered and can speak unencumbered, and we balance this with the potential for harm that a speech of a religious leader can cause. That's why defense for religious leaders is scoped tighter.
And while religious leaders have a right to preach their values, some caution that such values should not interfere with public policy.
The common view among religions does not by itself justify the use of the pulpit to influence public policy. They harm the feelings of those they condemn, and they raise and they create real risks of discrimination or violence against these minority groups. I hope religious leaders will promote their precepts constructively rather than destructively.
Mr. Tessera said the bill should also consider social harmony, in addition to its primary goal of religious harmony. In response, Mr. Shanmugam said that the role of the law was to set boundaries for how conversations are carried out, so that any discourse can be constructive. The debate also touched on the importance of maintaining secularism in the political space.
As we look towards tomorrow's Singapore and as we enter the 4G era, this House must ensure that the public space continues to be a secular and safe space for all Singaporeans, regardless of creed. While the terrain of religion and politics is not without its difficulties, it is critical that restraint, mutual respect, and equanimity define how politicians and religious leaders operate in Singapore.
Mr. Singh questioned if political leaders should be seen engaging in religious events. To that, Mr. Shanmugam said it's essential to manage the relationship with wisdom and common sense in a transparent manner.
For government leaders to cut off, not have contact with religious leaders will not be wise. Good, deep friendships between government leaders and religious leaders are extremely important. It helps to build trust, build bonds, and that is important for society as a whole and allows issues to be dealt with in an atmosphere of trust. But the key is to do it with wisdom, clarity of position, and mutual understanding.
While MPs supported the bill, they added that legislation can only do so much. They urged Singaporeans to uphold values of mutual respect, as social and religious harmony cannot be built overnight.
MPs also sought clarifications about the safeguards when issuing restraining orders and malicious foreign influence, which can come in the form of donations. Religious groups will now have to disclose single foreign donations that are more than $10,000.
For MRHA, we discussed with Apex religious organizations what the appropriate level could be. $10,000 was chosen because by the standards of donations, it was a significant amount. We had to balance between the risk and also the effort that religious organizations have to take. If you set it at too low an amount, they will have to take a lot of effort and it may not be meaningful.